Today, another live talk about the power of eight. We are on chapter 17, which is titled Going in Circles. So, this chapter is all about the mirrored rebound effect of sending healing intentions to others, and what the person who's sending the healing intention, what they get in return for that. So, it was an interesting chapter. There was a lot of information. Again, it was going over some scientific information about the different frequencies of the brain waves in different states. And I really enjoyed this chapter and can relate it back to a lot of different things. Um, Pollyanna, co-host here. Hi, Pollyanna. How are you?
Hi, it's so much fun to be back here with you again, Jennifer.
It
I love our
is.
conversations.
Yes. So tell me, what was it that stuck out to you about this chapter?
Oh gosh, I underlined so many things in it. Um, One of the things that really caught my attention was, and let me just find it here, was uh, the part about the brainwave states and how they could have positive effects on people's emotions that would become permanent.
Mhm.
So that gave me goosebumps,
Mhm.
that it really is about the frequency state that our brain is in. And talked about focused attention, and how um, that activated very fast frequencies in the brain, such as gamma waves. And then mindfulness, which is about noticing the sensations, around you and in you, resulted in very slow brain waves. So it's just interesting that there's this whole that heightened perceptual awareness that focused meditators bring to the outer life, and mindfulness to the inner life. I like that sort of inner and outer in terms of staying in this flow state of heightened awareness, and how
Mhm.
that positively impacts our emotional state. And so this starts to, like, I was starting to connect the dots myself, which is very much what Lynne McTaggart's doing in this book. Now that we're
Mhm.
so far into it, it's like, okay, it's starting to make even more sense as she shares this, that not only the person receiving the healing in these Power of Eight groups, but also the people sending it would get this, what she calls the rebound effect, right? This mirrored
Right.
healing. What stood out for you in the chapter?
Well, what you were talking about, I think it's worth even reading it directly from the book, because I love that part. And I even had it on, whenever I read this again this morning, I even put it down on little notes because I thought it was so good. But this is on page 174. So those that are here with us today, thank you. And this is the page that I'm going to be reading from, 174. But this was a study of the brain and how the brain changes and the different waves. So where the meditator concentrates on the in and out breaths, mindfulness, where participants maintain moment to moment awareness of all their sensations, including thoughts, to develop a less reactive response to them. I love that because we always talk about, at least in my studies, about awareness. Awareness is so key. And then the third one here was loving kindness meditation, where the meditator focuses on a feeling of compassionate love towards all other people. And all of these things, I really connected the dots on a lot of the things that I have been studying too over the, really intensely over the last, probably 4 years now. And that was from just mindset classes, as well as more in-depth spiritual classes. And it's this is really the key to all of it, and things that we learn in those classes. But the frequencies, I thought the scientific part of this and the frequencies were important. And she words it so well. But she said the focused attention and the loving kindness meditations, that gives you different frequency brainwaves, that heightened awareness. And as I'm reading this, I think, yeah, I know exactly what that heightened awareness is. In describing it is, it's always difficult to describe the feeling of it, but it's almost like you can feel, I don't know, how would you describe it? It almost feels like you're bling, like a blinging in your awareness, in your brain, like it's just a high vibrational feeling.
That's a good question, Jennifer. For me, I've experienced it a number of different ways. I generally speaking, experience it as like a peak state of flow.
Mhm.
I know for many years as a competitive dancer, pro-am ballroom dancer, there was one moment when I was just learning to do, the dancing, and I was just learning lead and follow, and I hadn't learned routines yet. And I had this opportunity to perform at in front of this group of people. Actually, it turns out that it was related to education. So I think I felt even more nervous because there I was, a teacher, and this was my thing that I was doing as a hobby on the side. And then what if, I just, the readiness, am I ready yet, kept coming up in my mind. And so my teacher and partner who I was going to perform with at that moment in time recognized the deer in front of headlights look in my eyes and said, let's just go back to lead and follow, because that's where you're comfortable. We did some breathing exercises. I meditated before I went out there. And literally, I just share this example because for me, I'll always remember this moment. It was like everything was happening in slow motion. And I was witnessing myself dancing and in my body simultaneously. So it was like a very unique experience. And I remember at the end of it, like it was almost comical as I was passing. It was like, hi. It was like so slow-mo. And at the very end of the performance, he hugged me and he said, "You're so ready to do, scholarship," which was a different level of competition. And I was like, I didn't even dance. I just walked through my whole routine. What are you talking about? So it's almost like my experience in time with the way I can relate it back to what you asked me is like when I talk about the flow, it's not just a mental flow. It's like my whole sense of the time frame gets stretched out. And
Mhm.
it's really, there's almost a sense of that eternal time, like no time frame. It's just all happening now and everything is aware of it, like, and at the same time it's beyond thinking, that's, I guess,
Yes, that
describe.
is a wonderful feeling. I know exactly what you're talking about. And it's all about presence, being very, very present in that moment. And the more we can do that, the easier things are. So the flow is, I can give some examples of just being present. And this is like some people are nervous to talk, maybe going to a meeting and having to talk or just, but really what I do is I'm just very present and I listen to what the people are saying.
Mhm.
Really listen. That's what Bob Proctor always told us. You really have to listen. Some people hear with their ears, but they're not listening. So you have to, yeah, you listen to the words, but there's also messages behind the words, right? And you get all of this intuitive information back when you're just present. And then when it's your turn to talk, it all just comes out so easily. It's not like I think before I trained myself to just be present is I'm trying to think about what I'm going to say while they're talking. And then that just kind of jumbles everything up.
Yeah, I love that you shared that because I heard two things in that and I can still relate to it. It's that state of calmness and then that state of trust. And, that's how, even with what we're sharing right now, we don't pre-plan what we're going to share. We just trust that what we're going to share is what we're going to share. I know with my chakra care for the Creative Soul show, I do the same thing. And I realized even that we're talking about it, I crossed a point where I stopped thinking about what I was going to say all the time,
Mhm.
and because I remember the first time I ever attempted to do a recorded webinar, that, that was very difficult for me because even though I had a slide deck and everything like that, there was all this self-consciousness and overthinking. And then this is kind of comical. I'm going to just throw this in too, because, the universe has a sense of humor. The outside window frames were being scraped and repainted that day. and we didn't know when they were showing up or whatever. And literally the moment I went to record my webinar, they started scraping the outside of my window, and I was like, things beyond your control. And so that's why I can say from experience being calm and trusting. Also with the Reiki, the Reiki training I had with my second Reiki teacher many years later, very much about holding space, not only for the other person, but just being that clear channel. So in a sense, you're holding space also for spirit to present itself, to reveal itself in the moment. And once people get comfortable with what that is, looks like, feels like, it's a wonderful doorway, I feel like, into this expanded experience of just trusting. And you're right, comes from presence of being that clear channel, right? Just like listening and listening to the other person, and really feeling into what people are sharing, right?
Yeah, and I think that presence requires practice.
Yes.
And whenever, people ask, well, about, I'm like, just quiet your mind. Well, how often should we do this? This is what, whenever I presented in front of senior high school students, they're like, how long do we meditate a day? What's like 15, 20 minutes in the morning, 15, 20 minutes, just calm your mind every day. And then you get to the state of where you can be more present in many situations. And that's one of the fruits that I have gotten from making that decision. I'm going to go out and heal. I'm going to be a healer. Is in the healing room. That's what we're doing. We're just present. We're not thinking any thoughts. We're just being there, healing with the frequencies that we allow in. So that's been really instrumental for my life.
And it's so incredibly important and powerful. I think that's why it's so powerful as healers in a world where there's so many distractions. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure this has happened for you many times too, especially because, once upon a time you worked in corporate.
Yeah.
I see this all the time at work and in other places, other social situations, where people are just talking over top of each other. They're just waiting for the other person to stop talking so that they can say what they have to say. And it might kind of mimic a conversation, but there's not that full presence of, I just heard what you said, and now it sparked something in me, and I'm going to share what you just said, and share what it sparked to me. Like, it's more like a litany of everything I'm thinking, then I'll be quiet, and then there's a litany of everything you're thinking, and then or
Mhm.
even more so, people talk over top of people intentionally, to kind of, or interrupt. And so this is why I feel like, even from my own experiences of receiving healing, how it's, and also sending it as well, both ways. I think sometimes for people, they experience it first, and then they see that they it's an experiencing the value of it, of that presence.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very good. Yeah. So on the brain waves, I just think that's important too, because I'm going to go over this again because people study this so much. The gamma waves of 30 to 50 hertz, and then the very slow brain waves of 5 to 8 hertz. The slower brain waves are so that the brain relaxes and becomes less concerned about reacting to what's going on in the environment. So, yeah, so I think it's practice. And still, even today, I still have to make myself, to practice, to really bring it to my consciousness. This is what I'm going to try to do. Even driving, driving's a great time to do it. But really sitting with people and listening is another great time to do it. Really, all day is a great time, but you kind of, if you put it in segments, I think it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's a great point, because oftentimes there's this sort of tendency to say, well, I'll meditate over here and then I'll go back to the rest of my day. And
Mhm.
ultimately, the I feel like the ultimate integration is moving throughout your day as if it's a meditation, and carrying that presence, letting it ripple out off of the meditation cushion into how you show up, at work, with your family, with your friends, with the stranger on the street. So it's like it starts there on the I almost said medication. It is a form of medication, meditation pillow. And ultimately, I think the ultimate ideal outcome is it ripples out beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've tried, I think there's different methods that people employ on the meditation part. And I've tried different things as well. Like in the morning where I really like plan my day, or even before I go to bed at night, I will go through the next day of how I want the day to look, how I want the next day to look, and how it's going to be ease and flow, and really picture myself, whether it's in meetings or whatever I have going on for the next day. Showing up with presence, with a smile on my face, having fun with people. So I plan my days in that way. And it's amazing to see how we're really doing that. We're really creating that. So it's like getting out ahead of the energy, which I think we talked about a couple episodes ago. But yeah, so that's how I do that. Meditation is more of a deliberate meditation, either before I go to bed or when I wake up in the morning for that 15 to 20 minutes. And then just taking the day as it comes in more of a presence state. And also a focused awareness, like when I'm driving down the road, what is my intention, during that time? Usually it's like even the traffic is going to be ease and flow, instead of thinking so much in advance, but just being present and being able to see what I see or hear what I hear, so there's all sorts of ways to do it.
Definitely. And yeah, I'm just thinking the way I can relate to what you're talking about, because first thing in the morning, I do a sort of a healing ritual that involves positive affirmations. And the way I use those affirmations is I live from the end. It's
Mm-hmm.
been inspired a lot by the work of Neville Goddard,
Yes.
and I've been doing that now for years, where I give thanks. So it's a combination of gratitude, giving thanks, and also living from the end as if it's already here. And I see it, I feel it. It's just in this now moment, it's just here now. And another thing that I like to do is just, it's funny, when I'm driving, I hear that voice. It's kind of like, Siri, you've arrived at your destination safely. And I hear that and I send it forward. I also wake up and always look forward to certain things. Like, what am I, like, I feel the shape of the day, and I send forward all the things I'm looking forward to in the day. And one of in my morning ritual, one of my favorite, I just always feel so good when I say this. I always say, I'm open and receptive to all the good and abundance that's available for me today, and I'm comfortable with receiving it. I have allowed myself to receive it, and so it is done. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And that just,
Yeah.
I feel all like, bubbly and happy inside, and that's lovely too. And then going for walks in nature, and just, that's more the mindfulness piece, being aware of the breeze, noticing the sunlight, the birds chirping, all the leaves, the abundance, just noticing what I'm noticing. That is, I guess, more of a mindfulness practice. There are also moments too, especially at night, when I've been busy all day with around a lot of people, I call back my energy, cleanse, refined, and I take a moment to really, it's a combination. I guess it starts off as sort of mindfulness, come back into my own body, into my own emotions, and just, and remember what it feels like just to be in my own energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then give myself some stillness and some silence and some quiet, where there's nothing stimulating me, because I find for a lot of people, it can become almost addictive, that we get so used to being stimulated all the time, that I feel like that's that's the sort of the bridge, that when we cross it, when we get spaciousness, just to be still and be quiet with ourselves and not have to try or be anything, just be.
Mhm.
It's very restorative, and not accomplish anything, just let the mind of form take a vacation, you know, pack its bags for it. And that I find very, doesn't, and it's for as long as it needs to be. And oftentimes I'll just drift off to sleep like that.
Mm.
And I quite like it. So, and then there's also the movement too, the chakra dance. I think I shared that with you before, where I really like that for sort of moving what's underneath the hood up to the front of mind, right? Because you're moving with it. I'm moving to sound healing music with my eyes closed, and there's a guided visualization. So it's all kind of just whatever's sort of coming up to the surface. It might be thoughts, it might be insights, it might be memories, it might be feelings, colors, sensations. It's all good. And I use it as a form of almost like the way people would brainstorm. I call it kind of heart storming or dance storming. It's this way of just kind of bringing it all up in a gentle way, that I'm really ready to receive it, and just being curious. I think that being curious is another way too, that we bring mindfulness into our lives, like,
Yeah.
as opposed to deciding, you know, to repeat the same old story about the negative expectation. We can just be curious about, even if something happens that maybe catches us off guard, I wonder what me invited this to be, Shri and Kira saying, what me invited this to be, or just like, I wonder, even if it's something that hasn't happened, something about the future, I wonder what it would be like if to feel calm in this moment. I wonder what it would be like to feel peaceful in this moment, as opposed to focusing on, I feel stressed or anxious right now, right? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
just shifting it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there was, something that I was reading the other day where it said you should try to find something new every day that you're excited
Hmm.
about. Something it could be something the example was something as simple as your plant has grown a leaf. Well, look at that new leaf, you know what I mean? But you should try to find something new like that every day. So I've been doing that, and it's actually fun because you notice so many things around you. Mine has been more on nature, focusing on nature and what am I seeing new there. And maybe that's because of the example they had given in that ensoulment. But I enjoy doing that. It's been fun. So also morning practices, and you've mentioned this at one time too. I would like to learn more about the chakra dance and what that
Oh,
is. So you'll have to take us through that at some point. A little
yeah.
bit, talk a little bit more about it. Because what I'm picturing for a chakra dance may not at all be what you're talking about. I don't know. Um,
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people ask me what it is, right? Because,
mhm.
a very unique movement healing modality. It's wonderful. I'd be happy to do that at some point.
So, but it is like movement with the body. Are you moving energy like with your mind?
Okay, it's very much a somatic sensing experience. So it's about allowing the conscious mind, to kind of just relax. Because I think it's Candace Pert who calls the body the subconscious mind.
Mhm.
Because oftentimes, when we're moving throughout our busy days, we might have, you know, something come up emotionally, and it's not appropriate to shed tears, or there's no pillow to punch, or, whatever is coming up, and we tend to just stuff it down. Well, that energy gets put into our body, stored in our body and our tissues. There's that saying, our issues are in our
Mhm.
tissues. And it doesn't go somewhere. Like we think, we think it's going somewhere, but actually we're storing it. We're kind of keeping a library of past,
Mhm.
healed moments that need, that energy just wants to go somewhere, just wants to be released. So the movement itself is a great way to release the energy that's been sort of stored in our body, especially emotional energy. And so we start off with a seated meditation for about 3 minutes, and then we move into a dancing warm up where you're standing and you can have your gaze lowered or eyes fully closed, and there's sound healing music that guides you on a visualization journey through each of the 7 chakras to open and activate them. And then if it's an intro workshop, you will focus on each of the 7 chakras. And then I've also done 9-week ones too, where we go into just focusing on the root chakra 1 week and then the sacral the next week and so on. And basically there is, there's no set dance steps or anything like that. You're just moving intuitively to the music.
Mm-hmm.
And going on an inner journey with the guided visualization helps you to do that. And then as we come out of the dancing experience, we move into some mandala art where, while you're still in that lovely flow intuitive state, we just set an intention first, and then that whatever wants to come forward can come forward. And then we move into capturing whatever came up for us symbolically or literally, however it pours it onto the page. It's not about how well you can draw or anything. And then we have a brief sharing where people can share perhaps the title of it or a few words. It's not my job to analyze or anything like that. It's just a complete sharing. And this helps to begin to integrate what people have been noticing for themselves. And then after that, we close with a short seated integration meditation. And it's just such a lovely flow. And I've even, there was one woman in one of the workshops I did at a Argentinian tango dance studio many moons ago. And I didn't realize it at the time, but she'd been suffering from vertigo. And after she danced the root chakra during the sharing part, because at first she had asked if she could have a chair, but then she got up from the chair and she was moving. Again, people tend to move sort of on the spot. They're not usually moving across the room, although I have on a few occasions seen that too. If people have a theater background, they're used to, moving in space. But she literally said after dancing the root chakra that it was the first time in years that she felt like she wasn't going to fall over.
Wow. Amazing.
And that blew me away.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's really cool with it too, that I've really been exploring it through my own little experiments with it also, is I had learned from the founder, Natalie Southgate, that it's also been used in hospitals for people who are lying in bed because, it's not a misnomer. You are dancing with everything that you're experiencing inside, but it's not necessarily that you have to be physically dancing across the room to receive benefits from it. And so I had a friend of mine who during the pandemic became a quadriplegic, and he's really open to alternative healing. And he's like, yes, please come and I'd love to receive a chakra dance experience. Mm-hmm. So I was there with him and I guided him through the whole experience, and I just modified it to meet his needs. And his comment was, I don't want this to end. So,
mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I can imagine how that feels.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of spontaneous twitching in his feet at the end too. It was interesting. It was something which told me there's something that's linked back to the chapter we've been reading, right? Mm-hmm. Something about the neuroplasticity of the brain and different brainwave states activating different centers of the brain. You know the part I'm referring to in the book, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I think it's on top of page 178, right?
Yes.
I thought that was interesting because I don't know if you want to share
One
that.
One of the things you were saying too before we move on to that part was that that we, light movement. I always taught light movement. Just go out and get some light exercise, do something. But also the other part to that is that you can get so much more healing done just by moving energy through your visualization and your imagination. So like you said, if someone can't just go out and do some light movements, even the visualization is so healing because you're moving the energy that way too.
Very much so.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how the brain works and how different ways of I think it comes down to and this is something I really felt inspired to share today too. She talks so much about focused awareness. And so it's that calm presence, as you were sharing earlier. I love that.
Mhm.
And then as we've been talking about that focused awareness, and as I was reading this chapter, what popped into my mind, so I guess this is the and more section a little bit now, but it is because again, I teach in the high school system, and I've noticed a shift with how many students are on their cell phones and how this is an ongoing situation of trying to get students off of their cell phones and focused on, what we're doing in class. And I'm very grateful to school I'm at. They're cooperative by and large for the most part, but there's always this tendency, this over reliance to whip them out rather than talking to the person beside them. Now I see that a
Mhm.
lot. And so the thought crossed my mind, just to say it as succinctly as possible, is that with all these distractions out there, you know, and so many things vying for our attention, it behooves us to really understand the significance of the impact of that on our brain on so many levels. That's a whole other show, but in a nutshell, I was thinking about it, about how we are potentially giving our power away to devices, you know, in the sense that if this idea of multitasking, which has been disproven as something that doesn't work, if we're spreading if we don't know how to, I guess, if we don't know how to focus our energy, if we don't know how to focus our attention, then we're giving up one of our sort of superpowers.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
that's what I
Yeah.
felt guided to just put out there. So, yeah.
Yeah. Even, I have teenagers, and even for us adults,
Hmm.
staying away from the iPhone can sometimes be a challenge, right? Until you practice it. But I know for a long time, if we're having dinner, we all take our iPhones and we pile them up. Like no one's looking at iPhones right now. And the first one to reach for their iPhone or get we make a game out of it. They're not the winners. You got to keep the iPhones tucked away while we're talking and having dinner. So I don't know, just a little something as a reminder that we're here. Let's be present. Let's talk to one another. So
Well, I bow before you. I'm so happy you're doing that. That's such great modeling for your children, right? Because it's true. I
mhm.
feel like, it's we need that time, and the mind to whatever gets. I feel like whatever the mind gets used to doing, is habituated to. It will
Mhm.
then start when we try to introduce, just putting our phones away or having quiet time. Even boredom. I mean, boredom is healthy. Boredom, like that because that might be our take on it at first, when we're used to being constantly stimulated by various things. But then to notice the benefits of just, we get to know ourselves, we get to be aware of ourselves, and therefore that gives us back our choice.
I think
So,
it helps with imagination, right? If
yes.
you're in a state where boredom, then you start using your imagination for things. And that's one of the main ways to make that connection, to help us with our superpowers, to help us create, to help us with everything. I loved how you said that, our superpowers, because I think that would get a lot of people's attention. Like we're giving away our superpowers, because
Yeah.
we do have so many superpowers.
Yeah.
Um, this morning, whenever I read the chapter, then it reminded me of other stuff I read. So I was getting out all these books, and I studied a lot today, but I love studying, so it's fine. But one of the things there was, and I have a coaching class that I do that's um, it doesn't it does touch on spirituality, but not so in depth about it like what I know, because I think I can connect it with people if it seems, you're connecting from the intellect to the spirituality. But one of the chapters was called The Brain, and this is from Think and Grow Rich, which is really all about spirituality and tapping into these superpowers that we have. And it's all about the broadcasting and receiving station for thought. So that's why you have to be open to actually get these impulses of thought that come to you, because they are coming from somewhere else too, you know. And there was a big chapter on in this chapter it talks about telepathy and clairvoyance. And there's always like scientific proof of this, or we have literature on this that it's true, when people could just really quiet the mind and really think positive and put these practices into place to prove to themselves that it's true. But clairvoyance and telepathy is all it's all real, and they're part of our superpowers.
Yeah, we have so much inside of ourselves, right?
Mhm.
And it can be so easy for us to buy into the notion that we have to look outside of ourselves for things. And then I feel like that's where, of course, we're always going to be growing and expanding and learning. It's just that balance perspective is maybe how I want to call it, where we are recognizing at the same time that we have everything we need inside of us.
Mhm.
It's just knowing how to access it. Like, we know how to use the iOS system on our cell phone, right? But how do we use our inner operating system, in terms of tapping into our own inner riches through
Mhm.
meditation, through mindfulness, through focused attention, through affirmations, all these things you've been sharing, we've been talking about today. There's a wealth of an abundance of inner resources, divine resources, and otherwise inside of us. And if we're constantly being stimulated by other, and I'm not talking about something that's maybe inviting you to reflect or to grow or expand, but just sort of, scrolling and stuff where it's just almost habituated and to the point where it's a form of self-soothing, just
Mhm.
to go there for a second. Imagine, I'm going to say, I wonder if, I wonder if there's other ways to self-soothe. And I know there are,
Yeah.
right? But just putting it out there to model what I was sharing earlier, right? I wonder if I could self-soothe myself in other ways. I wonder if just being with myself for a moment and noticing the temperature of my body, noticing, you know, my breathing, noticing if I'm smelling anything, just looking
Mhm.
for 5 things to notice. I wonder what that would be like. I wonder if that would be as soothing as scrolling on my cell phone.
Mhm.
And how would I feel? Would I feel the same or different? Just starting there with something really simple, or even 3 things. It doesn't have to be 5 things. It could be 3 things. And then you can go back to doing whatever you were doing before, and then compare it to you were doing a moment before when you were doing the 3 things, and just be open and honest with yourself and curious. I feel like these are the inroads, right?
Yeah. You talked about Neville Goddard's work, and I love I got his whole volume that I am actually reading it again for probably the fifth time, um, one of his books. But that's one of the things, is the inner talk too. So, whenever you're by yourself and the soothing, that the inner talk you do to yourself is part of that soothing as well. And I love how it's described here in this chapter about the brain waves, where where you have this higher frequency, but then you have the calmness below it as well. And when you can merge those states together and really be present, that's whenever you get the inspirational hits. That's whenever you can have, if we're paying attention to the outside or being distracted by that, it's like we're dispersing our energy out that way. But if we can
Mhm.
pull all the power within us and really have that concentrated focus on the good that we want, that's when the inspirations come in. And these inspirations are, it can be a feeling that you have, but sometimes the energy is so strong, that's whenever it just bursts into pictures for you, where for certain, okay, message received, right? You get that. So when those things happen, it's amazing to me. I
Yes,
love it. I
yes.
mean, yeah.
I'm excited. You expressed that so well, like so clearly. I love that you shared that. You connected the dots and you put like a nice bow on top of it for everyone who's listening right now. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. I love that.
Right? I mean, that energy is so concentrated. It's just without a shadow of a doubt. It it's a picture that you're receiving from spirit. So
Yeah. Yeah, these are the gifts. This is the inner abundance, right? Just
Mhm.
tapping into it, tuning into it. And and just imagine going through your day, letting the day reveal to you, being open to what it's revealing, and just it's almost like relearning. We used to know this, but relearning a new it feels new, but it's really ancient technology
Mhm.
and how to operate it, right? And I feel like so many more people are opening and awakening to that. We see it, the people that you work with, Jennifer, even young people too. Recently, you were sharing that with me as well too. The curiosity. I
Yeah.
feel like this is why I'm so happy we're continuing this conversation about this book, because I
Mhm.
sometimes ask myself, why are we doing this? It's a
Yeah,
great book, and that's part
I
of it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the iPhones can be very distracting, but the one good thing that I see coming out of the children, the kids, the young adults being on their iPhones is they're learning so much because the questions that seniors are asking me is not something that we learn out in the public. I mean, they have to. I assume they're learning it from the iPhones and searching stuff and learning more and then searching deeper because there's so much that can be learned. But then it's always coming back to yourself, being present after you learn these things, right? There was something, this is reminding me of something in the book as I was reading it this morning. Um, he was talking about, this is on page 177 at the top, but he was talking about a resonance response where just listening to hidden frequencies, it helps train your brain to operate correctly. I always wonder because there's so many technologies out today
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, well, these are the frequencies you should listen to, right? And I have tried one of them because I just wanted to see what it would do. And I can feel energy so much that, okay, yeah, I could feel the balancing going on. But is that just an intermediate step? Because I don't see how you could get from balancing that way without going through the steps of really quieting the mind and meditating and doing that own awareness dive and that inner, really putting intention on what you want to think.
That's a good question, and I'm not sure that I have the answer, but at the same time, I'll say, and at the same time, my sense of it, at least, and is just that law of entrainment, right? That, again, because we're talking brainwave frequencies,
Mhm.
and there was a part here too. I'm just going to jump back into the book for a second, where there was a mention that this is on the bottom of page 177, same page you're on, to the top of page 178, where Luz and Davidson discovered that practicing compassionate meditation produces more activity in certain parts of the brain called the temporoparietal junction, the medial prefrontal cortex, and the superior temporal sulcus, all of which are usually activated when we are altruistically inspired to help someone else.
Mhm.
Altruistic thoughts of healing also appear to change a number of networks in the brain: the orbitofrontal cortex, the ventral striatum, and anterior cingulate cortex, all associated with compassion, positive emotions, even maternal love. So, this this whole idea that if you have, and again, I think it's practice too. Probably doing it just one time is like training your brain over periods of time. This is my sense of it. I'm not a sound healer by training, but I don't know, my sense of it when I feel into it, and for what I understand so far, is there's that law of entrainment. So a higher vibrating frequency will entrain a lower vibrating frequency for a period of time. And if that happens repeatedly over a period of time, I would imagine from what they're sharing here, even in this chapter, that it has the capacity, because the brain is neuroplastic, to achieve a new set point. In fact, actually now I'm dipping my toe back into, I did a training with the Institute of Heart Math. It was a building personal resiliency mentorship training, and it was based on heart-brain coherence. And I think this ties into what you're asking me, because literally, when the heart and brain are in a coherent state, there's a different brainwave state, achieved. And so we're less reactive, we're more responsive. And they've used this training for EMS workers and police officers who are in high stress situations. And so they can protect their wellness and be able to be even more effective at their jobs, being of service. And so it's interesting because they talk about achieving a new set point as well too. So
Yeah.
sense is it is possible, with that.
So I guess my question would be, yeah, I know it works. I know it's healing. Can people develop their superpowers just by listening to frequencies?
Well,
I don't know. Maybe we should ask some people. We know a lot of
yeah,
people that it's not a question I've ever asked.
you know what? We should ask people if they have any thoughts or ideas about that. I don't know. I keep going back to, you got me curious now. That's why I'm like stuck on this. But I just want to share this. I feel like this is something I was sharing actually on Sunday during the show. I feel like for a lot of us on the inner awakening journey, the mind is the final frontier in terms of liberating ourselves and
Yeah.
expanding beyond who we just think we are into that awareness of ourselves as a multidimensional energetic being. And so it's a sticky point for a lot of us, myself included, on my own journey. Just when I thought, oh yeah, no, I've been doing my meditating, all this stuff, it still comes back. Like, it gets more and more sophisticated as we expand and grow, because it wants to keep its job. It's a very good bouncer, and doesn't like to let anything new or unusual into the club, right? And so I feel like, having said that it's the final frontier with a lot of inner expansion work, there's a big piece. I mean, meditation, mindfulness is all about not only shifting the brainwave states, but the brainwave states allow us to have a different relationship to the mind. So if we're having a different relationship to the mind, and the mind is becoming more, as I know Shri and Kira talk about this, the servant, then it's the consciousness, and maybe you've talked about this too, Jennifer, right? In other episodes, it's the consciousness that directs the mind, not the mind directing us, right? So how do we awaken that consciousness? Well, through meditation and mindfulness. So listening to music alone, that has those hidden tracks, my sense is, why couldn't it? Because again, it works more on that subconscious level, and that's where the stickiness is. So I guess, there's so much out there, if it works, great, and keep doing it. And
Right.
there's a lot to play with and explore.
Yeah, there is. Well, we are 48 minutes in already. That went really
Wow.
fast. We have some listeners on right now. If you have any questions, please feel free to chat, put it in the chat, and we'll check here and we'll answer anything that you might have for us. Was there anything else that we wanted to go over today that was related to this chapter, or anything else for the week?
I feel like I've shared a lot in this chapter. I mean, this chapter has so much in it. There was a neat point too about, this is kind of interesting, that some people might find this interesting. It's on the last page of the chapter 178. We know from extensive research that meditation has direct effects on the body, helping to diminish inflammation and alter the functioning of important enzymes, including an enzyme called telomerase, which affects the longevity of a cell. So basically they're saying it meditation improves immune system and nervous system responses and lowers stress hormones, which a lot of people already are aware of. I just thought that was like a nice tidbit to share on because again, for our minds, it's like, okay, well, if I option A or option B, and sometimes the mind is resistant to starting a new habit, right? And sort of the mind wants to know what's in me, what are the benefits that I can measure, and having wellness and longevity, so I just wanted to share that. That was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a huge benefit, right? That's and it's almost like now when going about my day, it's more of a playful, fun, like what am I bringing in today? What's going to happen? And being aware of that. And I think that's whenever you can get to that point of enjoying the journey, right? That's a wonderful place to be in.
It is. Oh, I love that. It's like it's magical, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This is one magical thing that happened to me this week when I trusted that. I was at an outdoor art show and I went to visit the booth of a woman I'd bought a few pieces from a number of years ago that I absolutely love. They're very celestial and just beautiful pieces of work. I have them in my home and I look at day, and I wanted to make a point of going back to her booth, and all of her pieces literally they speak to each other when they're all hanging up on the wall. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all having a conversation. I can feel it intuitively. And she said, oh, are you thinking of getting one? I said, I'd love to get one right now. And she said, well, do you want to take a couple home and try them on your wall? And I was like, oh, okay, that's really nice of you to offer. And we just had such a good connection. We were in that flow, in that trust, in that just allowing state, which was so beautiful. It was genuine, it was sincere, it was authentic. And back a few years ago when I had bought her other works, I gifted her a copy of my book. And she looked at me and she said, well, do you want to do a trade? And so I have the painting at home. It's framed. It's beautiful. And I'm going to be offering her an ascended numerology session,
Oh, nice.
soul purpose reading. But again, I share it because I want anyone listening to recognize that all of the stuff we're sharing, you're gonna encounter, because you were sharing that like phrase, I forget exactly how you said it, but like, see what's gonna pop up or appear today, right? And that popped up and appeared, and it felt so good. Not just because I was getting a painting, but it felt so good to be trusted, not only to trust myself, and that there was no fear in the transaction, in the agreement that we made with each other. And I've had and I know you have too, peak moments in my life where I've taken decisions from that flow state, and it's always worked out well. And if I go and I share that experience with someone who's in more of a fear state, with all respect, we're all exactly where we need to be at any given moment. It'd be like, well, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And, why didn't you get this person's, and why didn't you sign something over here? And I understand to the mind of form why all those lines of thinking make perfectly good logical sense. And yet the discernment for me has been when you're out there noticing what you're noticing, trust that those experiences that mirror back to you, that in syncness, that like you were talking about, the calm and the heightened awareness at the same time, and mirror it back to you, because that's how you can also increase your sense of trust in yourself, other people, all the good that's available in the universe. And we learn through contrast. Anyways, maybe I'm going on a tangent, but there was something there in that I just felt connected back into what we've been talking about.
Yeah. I had an experience. This was last weekend. about 10 days ago. So not this past, but I was at a wellness event. So I had a booth there, and I decided I wasn't going to heal that day because then I don't get to talk to everybody who stops by because I'm just healing, right? So um, I chose to participate more. I sell like crystals, and we talk about crystals, and I get to talk to everyone that stops by. And my friend, she did massage at the booth, so we still had, a little bit of healing going on there. But there was a gentleman, I don't know, he's probably late 30s, early 40s, stopped by. He was interested in the crystals and energy healing and spirituality. He was starting just to get a little bit into it. But because I'm so present there, because that's what I'm doing is just engaging with people and trying to understand where they're at and really listening to them. But there was sort of I would call it a mystical experience that happened with this one particular person. And your story kind of reminded me of it because I can see like you talking to this person and how it feels. But so much so that, he was talking about just trying to understand it, but he was much more evolved than I think he realized he was, because the energy I felt just standing beside him, you can feel the energy that comes in. And at one point it was like time just kind of stops for a moment. Like it literally stops. It felt like I was in this energy, like I wasn't moving, but like everything outside was just, it's almost like you're in this vortex, like this big bubble, and you can feel it in your body. And it's just a mystical experience. It's difficult to describe what it is, but my ears started ringing real loud, so you get these different signs and these different frequencies that come through your body to let you know, pay attention. This is a special moment. So, but then he was also asking, like, you know, would you can I mentor under you? But whenever I feel people's energy like that and those type of things happen, they're really evolved, really advanced. That's how I would describe. Even people that come into the healing room, I can feel that right away. That they know a lot more than what they think they know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's so nice that you can recognize that and honor that and mirror that back to them too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's I feel that's the sincerity sometimes, like because it's the sort of the beginner mind in one sense, just
Mm-hmm.
because, and at the same time it's wonderful when we have these mystical experiences where we feel that communion, that we
Mm-hmm.
sort of start to see the continuum between ourselves and another human being, and it sort of dissolves the separation, in terms of the spirit, and we're able to show up and really honor that person in that moment from the
Mm-hmm.
fullness of who they are.
Yes.
It's a real blessing. And I feel like this is the new earth that we're co-creating and we're being,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
And
think
we're
so.
getting little pings, little glimpses of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And they are starting to happen more frequently, compared to say 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. There was something else whenever you were talking, but it's not coming to my mind right now. So maybe it doesn't need to be said. But there was something else that I was like, oh, I got to tell about that story too. But all right. Well, very good. We're almost at an hour here. I'll check the chat here. See if we are streaming on a few different channels here, but I should be able to see all the chats, right? Many of the channels. No questions for today, but feel free if you're watching this video at another time. Um, if you have any comments or questions, please leave them for us, and we'll check back in with you. All right, very good. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Pollyanna, it's always a pleasure to be with you here on Wednesdays and talk through this material.
Thank you. I enjoy every moment of it too. It's a pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful